Hello, I'm Reverend Dr. Christine Tata and preaching for Reign of Christ Sunday, which is November 23rd this year. And I'm preaching for the churches at Chewelah United Church of Christ and also the church at Colville in Colville. And so it's an interesting presentation we have today. We did not celebrate, if you will, the Indigenous Peoples Sunday that many churches do on what used to be called Columbus Day. We didn't do that because we had other things we were doing. So today we thought we would do a service dedicated to the indigenous people of this land. Just to let you know that that is what is going to happen today. But first, I begin by reading the scriptures that are assigned for today. And I hope you will see that they do sort of support the ideas that we're going to put forth today. First scripture is from the prophet Jeremiah in the 23rd chapter. Oh no, the shepherds are destroying and scattering the sheep in my pasture, says Adonai. Therefore, this is what Adonai, the God of Israel, says against the shepherds who shepherd my people. You have scattered my flock, driven them away, and not taken care of them. So I will take care of you because of your evil deeds, says Adonai. I myself will gather what remains of my flock from all the countries where I have driven them and bring them back to their homes, and they will be fruitful and increase their numbers. I will appoint shepherds over them who will shepherd them. Then they will no longer be afraid or disgraced, and none will be missing, says Adonai. The days are coming, says Adonai, when I will raise a righteous branch for David. He will reign as king and succeed. He will do what is just and right in the land. In his days, Judah will be saved. Israel will live in safety, and the name given to him will be Adonai, our righteousness. Prophets just have to prophesy. The next scripture is from Luke, chapter 1, 68-79. Praise be to Adonai, the God of Israel, who has visited and redeemed the people and has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of David. Adonai has promised by the mouth of the holy prophets from of old to save us from our enemies and from the hand of all who hate us, to perform the mercy promised to our fathers and to remember God's holy covenant and oath sworn to our father Abraham, to grant us deliverance from the hand of our enemies, that we might serve God without fear and be holy and righteous all our days. And you, child, will be called prophet of the Most High, for you will go before Adonai to prepare the way, to give knowledge of salvation to the people for forgiveness of sin, through the tender mercy of our God, when the day shall dawn upon us from on high, and give light to those who sit in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the way of peace. Sounds pretty prophetic in Luke as well. Of course, a lot of these scriptures are prefiguring Christmas, but we're not there yet. We still have Advent to go through. Well, I've called my message a homily because it's supposed to be shorter than a sermon. It might not be. And I've called it the humans, and you'll see why in a minute. But if you were in the actual sermon, service, you would have heard Patty West offering a reflection based on her experiences of discovering her own connection and heritage to the Peoria tribe of indigenous people, and her subsequent learning all about what that means. She's quite correct that all people are diverse within themselves. She says so in that reflection. No one can claim any kind of pure heritage, and if they do, they're claiming a liability as if it were a good thing. Science tells us that too pure a heritage is a liability, genetically speaking. Diversity within ourselves, within our families, within our communities strengthens us both personally and communally. But you wouldn't know that from the way people have behaved in groups since time immemorial. When the prophet Jeremiah voices God the way he does, Adonai, saying, "Oh no, the shepherds are scattering my sheep," Jeremiah is certain that Adonai will gather the sheep together and punish the ones who have hurt them. Well, those shepherds clearly have a colonizing mindset, but we don't know much more than that from this passage in Jeremiah. And because this is only a homily, I'm only touching on that image to make the point that people and groups and tribes, as the Israelites were also called, have been invaded by stronger groups and tribes, stronger but with less conscience for thousands of years. In the time of our history in America and also in other places, but here is what I'm talking about. These invasions were called exploration. And the results of these explorations were called discovery. You know, as if the places had never been found before, as if there weren't actual people already standing on those places. And then, because those interlopers seemed to have been unable to actually recognize that people were there, the next steps always seem to be called settlements. And sometimes this settlement process was was peaceful, but not always, not often even. Usually it was a Holocaust that would wipe the map clean of the people who were there. And typically, the indigenous people here in this place, this country, they wondered quite seriously if those invaders were actually human, because they knew how humans were supposed to behave. And these creatures weren't behaving like humans at all. Now, most of us learned this history of, discovery and settlement long time ago. We learned it. You started in 4th grade, typically, and you drew the maps. But then, presented with new facts over the years, we realized we really had to learn the new words, the more accurate words to describe what happened. So now we, and by that I mean mostly we white people, have come to the place where we can acknowledge how our country came to take the shape that it did. It's not so much how the West was won, but from an indigenous person's standpoint, it's how the West was taken. Look, talking to the many of us who are not indigenous, we may be unable to discern what action we can take, what we can do about that newly realized history. We might feel helpless and hopeless in the face of that. But we do know that at least our faith tells us to ponder in our hearts what we are learning and to know the truth. At least that, because the truth will set us free. That's a baseline for us as believers, as faithful followers of our way shower, Jesus. So anyway, we've said land acknowledgement. We are indebted to Susan Chamberlain for work she's been doing on that. She's gathered up not only land acknowledgement samples from other churches, but stories about their struggle or their work and how to do this. What do we do about this? It's very valuable. In our land acknowledgement, we've just drafted based on her work. It's not an authorized thing at all. It's just a thing we say. It's a thing your pastor said. This is what we said. We acknowledge this condition, and we'd like to know more. We think we should study more. That's where we are. But I thought, well, we can start. Let's just start. We've started by listening and hearing from Patty, our friend and member. That's a start. She's learning as well. And so then I thought, well, wait, I know of some wisdom. I know of some wisdom from the indigenous population here. And I looked up a few other things. I thought I'd share them. Let's get wise. Let's learn. Let's start now. Show respect to all people, but grovel to none. That's good advice. That comes from Tecumseh. He lived in the 18th century. He was a Shawnee warrior and chief, a great speaker apparently, who resisted the expansion of the United States. He formed a confederacy, a Native American confederacy that sought to preserve native lands. One of the fighters. Here's another fighter. He said, if we must die, we die defending our rights. That was Sitting Bull. Hunkpapa Lakota leader Sitting Bull was becoming one of the most famous indigenous leaders in history. In the 19th century, he resisted government policies, fought for native rights, and after years of evading capture and struggling with starvation, he eventually surrendered. Then later he got out, and then the government authorities got all jicky about the ghost dance movement, and they were afraid he would be in it, and he was so influential and famous. But the ghost dance movement was a religious movement that promised the renewal of the earth, resurrection, and an end to oppression. Anyway, they tried to arrest him and prevent him from joining the movement, but he got killed instead. And his remains are buried at his birthplace in South Dakota. So that is how he died, defending his rights. The secret of our success is that we never give up. That's Wilma Mankiller. Don't you love the name? Yeah, in 1998, she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom from her work in the Bureau of Indian Affairs. She was an activist, community organizer, social worker, first woman elected as principal chief of the Cherokee Nation. These days, a lot of people have begun to practice and learn more about Native American spirituality. Some of them are just posers and dabblers. We know that. But others are not. Others are really excited about the focus on earth-centered practices and the stewardship of our environment. From my theological position, Native Americans' various earth-centered and creation-based ideas are very well aligned with what Jesus would say and want for us. We're to love God, love our neighbor, and I think love the creation. Because otherwise, how can we love our neighbor if there's no place to live anymore? See what I'm saying? It's pretty simple. Anyway, this is the world God made for us. We can learn to be better stewards of this world if we humbly look to our Native siblings for what they know. Spiritual seekers have studied the works of Black Elk. I know you've heard of this. A medicine man from the Oglala Lakota people who said, sometimes dreams are wiser than waking. This may really be true. They maybe have read his book that came out in 1932, but most people have heard of that. Native American voices in literature are very influential right now in what's called the second wave of, the second wave of the Native American Renaissance. Louise Erdrich has won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction, and she's an enrolled member of the Turtle Mountain Band of Chippewa Indians. Another Pulitzer Prize winner, N. Scott Momaday, has said this: "We are what we imagine. Our very existence consists in our imagination of ourselves. Our best destiny is to imagine at least completely who and what and that we are. The greatest tragedy that can befall us is to go unimagined. And finally, the author that we have highlighted here today, using her words for call to worship and other parts of the liturgy, again, thanks to resources provided by Susan, Joy Harjo. She's a musician and 3-time poet laureate of the United States and the first Native American in that role. Humbly, I'm appropriating her words to end this message. First of all, I just have to say, I hope we have honored, at least in a small way, our Native American brothers and sisters and siblings. I hope our church will take seriously the relationship we have with the earth and with people who are perhaps better stewards of the earth than we are. But it's a long journey. It's a long journey. Everything we try to do seems to be a long journey. So here's what Joy Harjo says, and I hope we can take this to heart. When we made it back home, back over those curved roads that wind through the city of peace, we stopped at the doorway of dusk as it opened to our homelands. We gave thanks for the story, for all parts of the story, because it was by the light of those challenges we knew ourselves. We asked for forgiveness. We laid down our burdens next to each other. May it be so. Peace.